Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. If you've been paying attention to the Aaron Torres Pod or Aaron Torres Pod YouTube feed, you know that over the last couple weeks, we've kind of done these college hoops off-season grades pieces. Really, it's just kind of a way to put a bow on the end of the offseason before, of course, we transition to college football full-time. Bring it up because we have done, I think, 7 or 8 of them so far. We've done Kentucky, we've done Indiana, we've done Arkansas, we've done UConn, we've done North Carolina, BYU, Louisville. That's 7. And I figured today, with Cooper Flagg in the news this week, Cooper Flagg, of course, the Duke freshman, Team USA select, goes to Vegas, goes toe-to-toe with LeBron and AD and Drew Holiday and whatever. Figured today would be a fun day to kind of ride that Cooper Flagg wave and go ahead and do our Duke basketball offseason grade. And I think it's especially interesting because I saw that on FanDuel.com right now, it's actually Duke that is the co-favorite going into next year alongside Kansas and ahead of the likes of UConn, Alabama, and a bunch of other schools in the national championship odds in 2024-2025. So let's go ahead. Let's do our Duke offseason grade. And it's really going to ultimately center around, is Cooper Flagg the X factor? Is he that Anthony Davis type, Derrick Rose type, whomever, that as a freshman can take a team, put him on his back, bring him to a Final Four, potentially to a national championship? Before we get to Cooper Flagg, let's look at big picture, 30,000-foot view, what Duke has done this offseason to kind of fully contextualize where they could be by March of next year. Worth noting, offseason started off a little bit slow, but it was in large part because of the fact Duke signs the #1 high school class in America. And when that happens, if you don't have a bunch of guys go pro, what ends up happening is you're going to lose a bunch of guys to the portal in this era. So it felt like the early part of April, late March into April, right after Duke finishes that Elite Eight run, felt like every single day you're looking at one guy after another, leaving the Duke program. I think in total there were 9. So that certainly feels like a big story. 9 guys left Duke. What does it mean? But if you really break it down, it's not nearly as bad as you think it is because bluntly, most of those guys were either going pro, graduated, or there wasn't really a spot for them on next year's roster. We don't need to go through all 9, but listen, Kyle Filipowski, whatever you think of what happened on draft night, was never coming back. He was an All-American, played really well, was drafted. Jared McCain, drafted in the first round, was never coming back. Then on top of that, a lot of the transfers, there was not going to be a spot for them in the 2024-2025 roster. Mark Mitchell, really good college player, but guess what? He's a wing, kind of overlaps with Cooper Flagg and some of the guys they're bringing in. He transfers to Missouri. Sean Stewart wasn't going to play next year, transfers to Ohio State, on. And I would ultimately argue that really of all the Duke guys that left, the only one that I really would be mad about if I was a Duke fan is Jeremy Roach, the multi-year starter at point guard. But even him, you kind of knew he's a fifth-year guy looking for that extra year. He has that extra year, is looking for that big NIL bag, and he was reportedly offered a lot of money by Baylor. And so you can't even fault the kid for leaving to go to Baylor. And so at the end of the day, again, that is probably the headline of the early part of Duke's offseason, the fact that they lost 9 guys at the end of the season. But virtually none of them would have played next year if they came back. And so as we look ahead to the 2024-2025 season, a couple things stand out. First of all, it is worth noting 2 really good players coming back this coming year. First one, Caleb Foster, was playing pretty well as a freshman. He's kind of a point guard type, averaged 7 points, 2.5 assists per game this past season, closer to 8 points actually, and had a couple really good games. 16 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists in a win over Pitt. In the out-of-conference, had a nice solid 18 points and 4 rebounds in a win over Michigan State. Other multiple games where he went into double figures. So played well when he was on the court, got hurt to end the season. He's back. And then also Tyrese Proctor is back as well. And I know Tyrese Proctor has kind of got a bum reputation because of the fact that he was a projected one and done coming in, has not played up to that level, but it doesn't change the fact that he's been a very good college guard during the course of his couple years on campus. He's coming off a season where he averaged just under 11 points, 4 assists per game on 35% three-point shooting. I know that's not what was expected when he committed as a sophomore, now going into his junior year, but all of a sudden you're talking about a guy averaged basically 11 points, 4 assists on 35% three-point shooting. If that goes up just incrementally, you're talking about 14, 15 a game, 5 assists, 4.5 assists, whatever, 37, 38% shooting from three. If he does that, he's an NBA draft pick next year, no doubt about it. So you have the two older guys coming back. But this whole season really does boil down to Cooper Flagg. So let's go ahead and talk about him, the other freshmen, the transfers, and what it means for Duke next year. And when it comes to Cooper Flagg, I'll be honest. Listen, I said this when we talked Cooper Flagg versus Team USA the other day, but I will admit that I have become a little bit jaded by the high school superstar that's the best player since this, right? Like, I've been covering this sport for a long time, and I have heard so many guys, the best player since LeBron, the best shooter since this, the best center since that, the best guy since KD, the best whatever. He would have been the number one pick if he was a high school soft. And it's like you get kind of jaded by all of that. But I do think seeing Cooper Flagg on that court compete with the best players in the world for Team USA, it really did open my eyes that this guy really is kind of worthy of the hype. And so one, I think the Team USA stuff showed me this guy belongs. Okay. Is he, whatever. I don't even want to say it, but he looked like he belonged playing against the best players in the world. Wasn't the best player on the floor, wasn't whatever, but he's also 17 years old. And what you saw on the court for Team USA, against Team USA for the Team USA select team, was a kid that has all the tools and really probably doesn't get enough credit for some of his tools as well. Again, we talked about, doesn't get credit for some of his tools. Sound a little bit weird, but you get the point, okay? But we talked about it after that Team USA event a few days ago, where I think sometimes you see a kid 6'8", 6'9", a little bit athletic, can handle the ball a little bit, and you just kind of lump all those guys together. Cooper Flagg's different now. Cooper Flagg is a guy that, first of all, can be a point center at 6'7", 6'8". Did it for his AAU team last summer, Maine United. He can play make from the high post. He's a guy that can get a rebound as a center, rip, run, go. But then also he is a great playmaker with the ball, a great decision maker with the ball, a guy that in the high post can find the cutter. I mean, every time I watch him, that to me is the most impressive part, is his basketball IQ and his playmaking ability. What I thought was interesting about the Team USA stuff was that what we also saw was that he can play off the ball as well. Thought to me, and I'm not saying he'll necessarily do that at Duke, but thought to me the most interesting part of the conversation when it came to Cooper Flagg from the Team USA stuff was what Jaime Jaquez had to say about Cooper Flagg. If you go back and listen to what Jaime Jaquez of the Miami Heat said, I thought what was interesting about it was Jaime Jaquez basically said something to the effect of like, dude, what's so special about him, he has no fear. Let me see. I just found the quote right here. This is what Jaime Jaquez said about Cooper Flagg, is that it said to be able to do what he did without playing a college game, let alone an NBA game, there's no fear. This is the part that's important. It's relentless. And the thing that you can tell about him is that he has a knack and a will to win. He doesn't need the ball. He just finds a way to it. And the ball finds its way to him. That's something that you can't teach. He's just got a great feel for the game. And so I bring that up to just simply say when it comes to Cooper Flagg, that is what stands out, is that he can play on the ball, he can play off the ball, he can play point center, he can play on the wing, he can create, he doesn't have to create. He is just so versatile. And so when I look at this kid, I do think that he is that Derrick Rose, Anthony Davis type freshman that can carry a team. And the thing that I got to say, I got to give Jon Scheyer credit. I know everybody likes to make fun of Jon Scheyer, and he's not Coach K, and he'll never be Coach K. And obviously, again, there was the Kyle Filipowski stuff last week where should he take blame? Should he not take blame? Filipowski's brother is blaming him, but is it Jon Scheyer's actual fault? Whatever. What I do like, though, is the roster that Jon Scheyer has put together around Cooper Flagg. Because, one, you have some really good freshmen around him. Con Knippel, 3-point shooter, elite, well, 3-level scorer, more than a 3-point shooter out of Wisconsin. Really good. Isaiah Evans, big wing, NBA future, just looks like a kid that belongs in the league. You have Patrick Mbonga, the big man, who's a fringe 5-star guy. You have the Kaman Malawak from Africa, and I'm sorry I'm tripping over his name. I practiced it in the mirror several times, but this is a kid that's a projected first-round pick as well. So you have the high-level freshman around Cooper Flagg, but what I think is as important is the transfers that you brought in behind them. Because at the end of the day, we know that you don't win in college basketball in 2024, 2025 with just freshmen alone. You can't do it. Go back to Kentucky this year. As good as Reed Shepherd was, as good as Rob Dillingham was, who was the most consistent player on that team? It was Antonio Reeves. You go back to all those great Kentucky teams, all the great Duke teams. Remember, the Jahlil Okafor team had Quinn Cook, had other veterans. And so you look at the veterans that Jon Scheyer brought in. I like the pieces that they brought in. Mason Gillis, the 6th man for Purdue's national runner-up team, comes in, will be a 3-point shooter, knows how to play a role, has played on the biggest stages in college basketball, was at Purdue, played in the Big Ten, at Indiana, at Michigan State, big road environments. He's not going to be afraid. Also, the kid I really like, Sion James, okay? 14.5 points per game, really athletic kid. I think if you watch him, that's a kid that to me could play in the NBA. He transferred from Tulane, but it doesn't change the fact that it doesn't matter where you start, it's where you finish. NBA frame, NBA athleticism, skill set's gonna get there. That dude might be an NBA player. Malik Brown, another nice piece from Syracuse. And so you put all these pieces, it is about Cooper Flagg. You put all these pieces together. I'll be honest, I do think this Duke team is a team that can mess around and win a championship. Now, will they? We don't know. Do I think they should be the co-favorites? Probably not. Kansas, Alabama, UConn, probably a few others in front of them. And I'd probably have North Carolina because they bring back a few more pieces, just a tiny bit ahead of them in the ACC. But it doesn't change the fact that this was a heck of an offseason for Jon Scheyer. And so since these are offseason grades, let's go ahead and give Duke, I got to give them an A-, because I don't think it's perfect. I think there was 1 or 2 guys that you would have liked to keep that transferred out. So maybe a B+. Maybe I'll give them a B+. I think a B+ is right. I think there's probably 2 guys that I would have liked to keep, including Jeremy Roach. Maybe it was never possible. But I also think you backfilled really well through the portal. And I think more importantly, you put together a roster that complements Cooper Flagg and what he does well. Don't think Duke's the favorite. Don't think they're the national championship frontrunner. Do think that Jon Scheyer had a heck of an offseason. That is my offseason grade. By the way, a quick reminder, all our offseason grades are available on YouTube. And also, we've run a few of them here on the Aaron Torres podcast feed as well.